My name is Susan Curlee, and I live in Williamson County, Tennessee. I'm a mom of 2 girls and a wife, and I spent about 20 years in corporate America as a marketing and salesperson. So I managed marketing campaigns for brands, most recently for Mars Pet Care. In 2012, I had a series of surgeries, and after the final one, they actually diagnosed me with ovarian cancer. And it was during that recovery time that I attended my daughter's 4th grade graduation. I saw a number of teachers and administrators retire. As the daughter of an educator, I was floored, I was shocked. I was trying to find out what happened. I was so shocked I went home that night and told my husband, I said, honey, I don't know what's coming or if it's already here, but these teachers obviously sense something, because you don't see teachers retiring in numbers like that. I'd been a room mom, I'd been a PTO mom, I'd been up at that school so many times, and I'd never quite sensed it. And that's what was so upsetting. It was so sudden, and it really caught my attention. When my youngest child went to the same elementary school and started in kindergarten, after my oldest one had left, it had been a lapse of about 2 years there. When I walked into that school for the first time, I felt something was different. It wasn't a change in administration, it was something else. The teachers were on edge. They were tense. You could see the stress and the strain on their faces. And I knew that something had shifted, and it had everything to do with those large number of teachers retiring the year or 2 prior. Shortly thereafter is when I made the decision to run for school board here in Williamson County. My husband and I thought this would be a good way for me to get involved in our community and to do something good for our kids. This would be a great opportunity to serve, and I have that perspective as a daughter of an educator and as a parent and as a working professional. I thought I had a lot to offer. I had no idea that the election would take on the tonality that it did, that it would require every ounce of energy that I had, but it did. Why? Because we were up against a tremendous force that was backed by a teachers union and also by SEIU. Turns out the NEA, the AFT, and SEIU have been partnering. They've developed a strategic partnership to come in and enforce some of these progressive agendas specific to education. They're also partnering with PTOs. When you see groups, when you see organizations like Strong Schools, Strong Communities, understand these are NEA-backed. NEA put a document out there on the internet. I found it afterwards. It is the playbook for setting up these organizations. They give a step-by-step approach. They even tested strong schools, strong communities, strong economies. It tested well, and that's what they're using. These groups are anything but grassroots. These are leftist, progressive agendas. The local teachers union set up an organization that was called the Williamson Political Action Committee for Education. So it sounds very benign, very pro-education. And to someone who is simply reading a paper, if you see someone who is endorsed by the Williamson Political Action Committee for Education, you must think that these people are really for education. Actually, what they're for are teachers unions. What they're actually for is a very leftist agenda. They are for a very progressive agenda. This is not a very benign group that is looking out for truly what's best for education, what's best for teachers, and what's best for kids. They're looking out for what is best for the teachers union, best for the Democratic Party, and best for those who agree and will be complicit to the wishes of the teachers union, to SEIU, to the Democratic Party, and to that progressive agenda. So after the campaign, the war is not over. The battles continue right here in Williamson County, Tennessee, and we're still looking for the truth, is still looking to expose the truth. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, is to help you identify these groups. Now, a lot of times they may go by strong schools, speak, they stand for education is another one, but always look at these organizations and look at who's involved with them. Look at the agenda that they are for, and look at those things that they are standing up against. More importantly, look at who they are trying to silence. One of the things that I definitely saw time and again is that these people are students who have obviously studied the Alinsky playbook, and they definitely live it out day in and day out. They definitely try to isolate, intimidate, and keep people like me from coming forward. The truth is the one thing that exposes them for who and what they are. It doesn't mean it's going to stop them overnight. I'm sure they'll crop up under another AstroTurf name. But again, you can always look at who is behind the group. As they say, follow the money. After the election was over and I had an opportunity to have some space and some time to breathe, it still bothered me. Who were these people? And what was it that drove them to come after an ordinary person with a relentless level of vindictiveness and hatefulness? And I started looking across the country and spent numerous hours on the computer. What I found is that strong schools, strong communities wasn't just here in Williamson County, Tennessee. It was in Colorado, it was in Chicago, it was in Oregon, it was in California, and since the timing of the election, they've cropped up in even more locations. Each and every time they're affiliated with NEA and with SEIU. Additional research found where SEIU and NEA have actually been joining forces with PTOs to not only push Common Core, but drive a very leftist progressive agenda. One of the other documents I found was on Democracy Alliance and Big Soros money. And when you look at who sits on the board of Democracy Alliance, you'll see members of SEIU and NEA. Also, AFT is becoming a very big part of that organization as well, and education is at the forefront of that agenda. They do have a way of twisting truths and creating news and finding ways to get those into newspapers. So we do have work to do to combat that, but one of the first things that we can do is expose who these people are. And that's why I'm here today. No one should have to go through what I went through. As someone said, they kind of picked the wrong person to target because I'm from Texas and I just don't back down. We're not shy about calling things like we see it. So I'm just stubborn enough and hard-headed enough. And after staring at cancer, bring it SEIU, I will definitely hit back. And luckily I've had voices who have been available to me, be it talk radio, be it National Right to Work, be it professional educators of Tennessee. Having a voice and being able to let others know what to look out for is paramount. There are good people out there who will want to run for school board, and when they see what happened to candidates like myself, they may think there is no way I would ever want to throw my hat into that ring. But that's precisely what we need. We need good people who are willing to stand up and expose these groups for who and what they are. It's when good people stay silent that they are able to drive this very progressive agenda that most of our communities fundamentally disagree with. This is about them getting their way, and they're being bullies about it. We talk about anti-bullying in schools all the time, but yet here's these organizations, and that is precisely what they do. They live to intimidate. They want to silence those of us who are strong enough and brave enough to step forward and say, we want to be part of changing things for the better. And so we need to stop them. And the one way to stop them is to expose them for who and what they are. They're bullies, and when they're propped up behind a name that sounds very benign and goes under the auspices of being for public schools and for public education, we need to rip that cover off and expose them for who they are. They are anything but grassroots. They are as astroturf as it gets. And exposing them and putting the light of day on them is going to be key to stopping this in this country. After the election, and after seeing that these battles were continuing to wage on, I had suspected all along that our superintendent was deeply involved and embedded with this group. I was repeatedly intimidated and asked to withdraw my records request. If there was nothing to hide, what harm was there? And I waited for several weeks. This culminated in a Let's Talk Schools event where I was placed in a room, isolated from all the other school board members. I was down a different corridor. The school board attorney was assigned to my room, and over 50 parents crowded into that room, most of them members of this group, Williamson Strong. They stayed for over an hour. They were hostile, accusatory, and I was later told that that was more tense and intimidating than any contentious zoning meeting that the principal had ever attended and that other people in that room had ever attended. A mom that was in that room spoke to me the next day. I'd never spoken to her, had not spoken to her previously until afterwards. She told me she was in there with her 3 children and she was concerned for their safety, and that was the only reason why she did not speak up. So if that gives you any sense for the level of tension in that room, it was tremendous. After the Let's Talk Schools event, I considered pressing charges because it was extremely hostile. If I had gotten up from where I was seated at any point, I have no doubt in my mind that it would have turned physical. I was also escorted to my vehicle that night. After all of this transpired, I reached out to our attorneys and said I wanted access to those records, or I was going to the sheriff's office to press charges, and I was also going to go to the media. And miraculously, my records were ready. What those records reveal was quite startling. Not only was the superintendent involved, he was very much involved in the planning of this organization. This group had reached out to our superintendent and at least one sitting school board member to determine who to support, who not to support, and to conduct research. School resources were also used to research the children of candidates who were running. A list with kids was referenced. They weren't just looking at us, they were also looking at our children, which I find deeply disturbing. In those records, I found out that our superintendent had access to all of the emails that were coming into the board. Not only did he have access, but he was forwarding those emails on to incumbents who were up for re-election during election time. He was forwarding them on to his private email address, and these emails were the ones that were ultimately used and referenced in the blog Williamson Secrets, which read very much like the National Enquirer and was used to basically be character assassination pieces on new school board members. Also contained in those records was evidence that the meetings I had heard about, the meetings where the union representatives were maligning the new school board members and trying to incite fear in the teachers, that those meetings were not only going on, but that Williamson Strong was very much a part of them. In those records, I found the talking points. In those records, I found the handouts. Open records were a gift. Open records were not just a gift, but that is a very small segment of the amount of information and proof for what we all suspected and knew in our gut was happening. It's what we don't know. but I'm determined to find out the truth, because again, this is about exposing these organizations and groups for who they are and exposing corruption at its core. And if that level of corruption is happening in a school board race, imagine what happens with other races. Putting the light of day on these groups will expose them. Use open records requests. Use those outlets that are available. If they are not registered organizations, there are opportunities to file with the local Secretary of State, with your Secretary of State's office, with the IRS potentially, with election commissions. Exposing these people for who they are is critical, and we have to use some of those avenues that are available to us. As conservatives, I think a lot of times we feel like doing what's right and telling the truth will get the job done. It takes more than that. Sometimes it takes action, and it takes legal action. Filing a complaint with the Election Commission was definitely one of the first steps for me. And that certainly made the news and was an opportunity to get my side of the story out and to start exposing the truth for what it was. The group has been told they must show cause, and I'm interested to see what the results of that hearing will be.